Something is quietly taking shape inside the Philadelphia Eagles right now, and if you really break down how this roster looks after free agency and the draft, you start to realize this isn't just another routine offseason adjustment. This is a team that is clearly retooling with a purpose, and it all starts with how the offense is being reshaped around its most important player. At quarterback, everything still runs through Jalen Hurts. There's no controversy there, but there is pressure. After what was described as an up-and-down 2025 season, the expectation is not just improvement, it's a return to elite form. A big part of that struggle last year came from instability, especially along the offensive line and within the coaching structure. Now, with Sean Mannion stepping in and already receiving strong early feedback, there's a real belief that this system could unlock a more consistent and confident version of Hurts. The narrative that he struggles throwing over the middle doesn't fully match reality. The tape shows that when those plays are actually called, he has displayed timing, accuracy, and touch. The issue has been volume and scheme, not pure ability. And with offensive philosophy expected to shift away from predictable tendencies like excessive pitch plays and limited crossing routes, this could be a major turning point. Behind Hurts, the situation is quietly interesting. Tanner McKee is entering the final year of his contract, and there's a legitimate question about his future. If another team suffers a quarterback injury during training camp, his value could spike quickly, possibly into a second or third round pick range. The addition of veteran Andy Dalton brings experience and familiarity with the system, which gives the Eagles stability. Meanwhile, rookie Cole Payton already took all the reps during minicamp, signaling that the team is serious about developing him early. At running back, there's less drama, but still an important storyline. Saquon Barkley remains the centerpiece, but expectations are being recalibrated. After an all-time historic 2024 season, a statistical drop in 2025 was almost inevitable, especially considering the heavy workload he carried. Even so, his athleticism still looked strong. The bigger issue again ties back to offensive line performance. What's interesting now is the potential expansion of roles behind him. Tank Bigsby showed flashes late last season and could push for more touches, while Will Shipley and Dameon Pierce provide depth and versatility. There's even some experimentation happening with Carson Steele potentially transitioning into a more hybrid or fullback type role to complement Barkley's usage. Then you get to what might be the most surprising development on offense, the wide receiver room. There is a strong expectation that A.J. Brown will not be part of this team moving forward, possibly being traded after June 1st, and while that sounds like a massive loss on paper, internally there's a belief that this offense can actually function more efficiently without needing to force feed a single dominant personality. DeVonta Smith is expected to step into the true number one role, and there's real confidence that his production is about to explode. His route running, versatility, and overall skill set have always been elite, but now the opportunity matches the talent. Around him, the group becomes more balanced and diverse. Players like My Lemon are expected to thrive in the slot, while Dontavian Wicks brings physicality and reliability on key downs. There's also speed in the room, with Marquise Hollywood Brown stretching defenses vertically. Add in depth pieces like Darius Cooper and Johnny Wilson, and suddenly this unit looks less top-heavy and more complete. It's not about replacing one star, it's about distributing production across multiple complementary weapons. At tight end, this could quietly be the final chapter for Dallas Goedert in Philadelphia. But instead of immediately moving on, the team appears open to maximizing what they have, especially with the emergence of younger players like Eli Stowers. There's a real possibility that we see more 2 tight end or even 3 tight end sets, which would align with the physical identity this offense is trying to reestablish. The competition for the remaining spots in that group is wide open, with multiple players fighting to secure roles. And all of this leads to what might be the most important factor of the entire offense, the offensive line. Everything depends on this unit. If they return to anything close to their 2024 form, this team becomes a legitimate Super Bowl contender again. If injuries or inconsistency creep back in, the entire system could struggle. The encouraging sign is the investment in depth. Multiple young players have been added through recent drafts, and there's a belief that this group is better equipped to handle adversity than it was a year ago. So when you step back and look at the full picture, this isn't just about individual changes. It's about a philosophical shift, less reliance on star power in certain areas, more emphasis on structure, depth, and balance. The Eagles aren't tearing things down, but they are clearly recalibrating how they want to win. And that's where the real question begins. If this offense becomes more balanced but loses a major name like AJ, Brown, do you think this actually makes the team more dangerous, or are they taking a bigger risk than it seems? And when you flip over to the defensive side of the ball, that's where things start to look even more intriguing, because this isn't just a solid unit, it has the potential to be one of the most dominant groups in the entire league if everything clicks the way the organization is expecting. It begins on the interior defensive line, and there's a real argument to be made that this is the best defensive tackle room in the NFL right now. Between Moro Ojomo, Jordan Davis, and Jalen Carter, you're looking at a combination of power, explosiveness, and upside that is very hard to match. Jordan Davis has already secured his payday, which tells you how much the organization believes in his long-term impact. But the spotlight is shifting heavily toward Jalen Carter, and this is shaping up to be a defining season for him. There were flashes of dominance, but also inconsistency tied to conditioning and injuries, especially with the shoulder issues he dealt with. Now, reports indicate he's in better shape, looking stronger, and moving with more confidence. If he puts it all together and performs at an all-pro level, there's a very real scenario where he becomes the highest paid defensive tackle in NFL history. That's the level of expectation surrounding him right now. The depth behind that starting trio also matters more than people think. Players like Byron Young and Ty Robinson are not just placeholders. They're developmental pieces the Eagles are counting on to take that next step. Robinson in particular, as a former 4th-round pick, has the physical tools but needs to show consistency. If even one of those rotational players breaks out, it makes this unit even more dangerous over the course of a long season. On the edge, one of the biggest moves of the entire offseason was bringing in Jonathan Greenard, and this is the type of addition that can quietly change the identity of a defense. He's not just a pass rusher, he's a complete player who can defend the run at a high level while still getting after the quarterback. That kind of versatility is exactly what Vic Fangio values in his system. What makes this move even more interesting is the financial and strategic aspect behind it. The Eagles managed to acquire a highly productive player at a lower cost compared to similar options, while also balancing future draft compensation. It's a classic Howie Roseman move. Calculated, aggressive, and forward-thinking. There are still questions at the position though. Nolan Smith has shown flashes of being a disruptive force, even exceeding expectations at times, but availability and consistency remain key concerns. The team clearly believes in him. They've already exercised his 5th-year option, but this is the year where he needs to turn potential into production. The same goes for some of the other depth pieces added in free agency, players who have talent but haven't fully put it together yet. This group has upside, but it also has volatility. At linebacker, the situation becomes even more layered. Zach Bond proved he can play at an elite level, earning all-pro recognition, but last season showed signs of regression, partly due to lingering knee issues. If he returns to full health, he immediately stabilizes the middle of the field. But the real wildcard is Jihad Campbell. His talent is undeniable, arguably one of the highest ceilings on the entire roster, but injuries have already become part of his story early in his career. Shoulder issues flagged before the draft, and then again afterward raised legitimate concerns. Still, the Eagles drafted him in the 1st round for a reason. If he stays healthy, his athleticism could completely change how this defense operates at the 2nd level. Behind them, there's a quiet confidence in the depth. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is viewed as a player who can step into a bigger role, especially after the departure of Nakobe Dean. And don't forget about players like Smael Mondon, who were added with development in mind. This isn't a finished group, but it's one that has been carefully constructed with both the present and future in mind. Now, when you look at the secondary, that's where things get really exciting. The cornerback room might actually rival the defensive line as the best positional group on the team. Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean both reached all-pro level, which is rare for such young players, and now they're being complemented by the addition of Reek Woolen. Physically, Woolen is one of the most gifted corners in the league. His size, length, and speed allow him to match up with virtually any receiver. The only concern has been discipline, particularly with penalties, but in the right system, that can be managed. On a 1-year deal, this is a low-risk, high-reward move that could pay off in a big way. The depth in that room is also solid, with veterans who bring experience and younger players who still have room to grow. It's a unit that feels complete, versatile, and capable of matching up against different offensive styles. But then you get to the safety position, and that's where the uncertainty starts to creep in. This is widely viewed as the weakest spot on the roster right now. Andrew Makuba showed promise before his injury, but the big question is who lines up next to him. There are multiple internal options being evaluated, including Marcus Epps and younger, less proven players. There's also experimentation happening, like moving Michael Carter from corner to safety in an effort to maximize his value. What's important here is that the front office is fully aware of this gap. There have already been hints that another move could be coming, whether through a trade or a late addition. Names like Justin Reed, Budda Baker, and Grant Delpit have been floated as potential targets, which tells you that the Eagles are not content leaving this position unresolved. They may wait to see how things develop during training camp, but history shows that this team is always willing to make aggressive moves if they identify a weakness. So when you put everything together, the strength of the defensive line, the upside at edge rusher, the potential at linebacker, and the elite talent at cornerback, this defense has the foundation to be one of the best in football, but it's not flawless. The safety position looms as a potential vulnerability, and the success of several key players depends on health and development, and that brings everything full circle. This roster, as a whole, is not lacking talent. In fact, it's loaded, but it's also a team walking a fine line between dominance and uncertainty. The pieces are there, the structure is in place, and the expectations are rising. Now it becomes about execution, adjustments, and whether the risks they've taken, especially at wide receiver and safety, end up defining their season. If you've made it this far, you already understand how high the ceiling is for this team, but also how real the questions are. So now I want to hear from you. Do you believe this roster as it stands right now is built to make a serious Super Bowl run, or is there one move you still think they absolutely need to make before the season begins? And the more you sit with this roster, the more you start to realize that this isn't just about talent, it's about timing. The Philadelphia Eagles are entering a phase where several key players are either about to get paid, about to prove themselves, or about to be replaced. That creates urgency, and in the NFL, urgency can either sharpen a team into a contender or expose cracks that weren't obvious at first glance. Take the offensive identity, for example. Moving away from a structure that heavily leaned on a dominant wide receiver like A.J. Brown isn't just a personnel change, it's a philosophical bet. The Eagles are betting that distribution, versatility, and unpredictability will outweigh the value of having a singular offensive focal point. That only works if Jalen Hurts takes full control of the offense in this new system. He has to process faster, trust the scheme, and deliver the ball on time. Because now, instead of forcing plays to one elite target, he'll be responsible for elevating multiple players across the field. That kind of transition can be dangerous early in the season. Timing issues, miscommunication, and inconsistency can show up. But if it clicks, this offense could become much harder to defend than it was before, simply because defenses won't know where the ball is going on any given play. Now on the defensive side, the conversation shifts toward dominance versus depth sustainability. It's one thing to have elite starters, it's another to maintain performance across an entire season. The Eagles have invested heavily in their defensive line and cornerback groups, and those units could carry this team in big moments. But football seasons aren't won in perfect conditions. Injuries happen, rotations matter, and that's where players like Ty Robinson, Nolan Smith, and even the linebacking depth become critical pieces of the puzzle. Another layer to this is Vic Fangio's system itself. His defenses are known for being disciplined, structured, and difficult to exploit, but they also demand intelligence and adaptability from players. Young talents like Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean thrived, but now the expectation is consistency, not flashes. Opposing offenses will study them differently this year. They won't be surprises anymore. And then there's the psychological factor.